Hi everyone, welcome back. Okay, so with everything going on with the coronavirus and everything, this is a perfect opportunity to slip away into another world, into another book, and be somebody else for a little while. And that is exactly what I did with my next book, which is The Alice Network. So this is my first historical fiction review. Historical fiction is one of my favorite genres to read, but I always feel like after I read it, I have to read some other type of book because it always takes a while to sink in, and I find myself thinking about it for a couple weeks afterwards. So I'm so excited to do this book. So I wanted to read it because it's about spies and history, and that's two of my favorite things to read about. I found this book on a couple different websites. It was on a couple different lists of popular books for the time, and it's part of Reese's book club, and I also saw it on her site as well. So I put it on my list because, like I said, it talks about spies and history, and those are two of my favorite things. But the summary was pretty vague, so I wasn't super intrigued by the book just by reading the summary. But now I finally understand why it was so vague. So I'm going to try to not spoil the book for you. So I struggled to figure out what to say because I didn't want to give too many details in case you do want to read it. And if you don't want to read it, I can tell you what happens, and that'd be that. But I don't want to ruin the plot for you. So with that being said, this book is a commitment. It's about 500 pages with the story, and then at the end the author gives an explanation of the parts that were fiction and the parts that were real and the events that were real and stuff like that. So it's a little bit of a commitment, but don't let that scare you. Okay, to give a quick summary, so there are two different timelines, which is typical with most historical fiction books that I've read. So the first one is 1915 during World War I, and the second one is 1947, 2 years after World War II. So in both timelines, the setting is in France for the most part, to give you a little background. Okay, so we start with Charlie. Starting in 1947, Charlie is a knocked up American teenager from a rich family. So her mom is taking her to Switzerland to get the little problem taken care of, because at the time, if you had the means, Switzerland was the place to go. So they took a boat from the US over to England, and then was gonna travel on to Switzerland. But Charlie ran away from her mom while in England. She ran away to London because she's looking for her cousin Rose. Okay, so Rose is from France, and she has disappeared after World War II. They can't find her, no one's been able to contact her, and Charlie is obsessed with finding her. Literally, that's all she talks about. I need to find Rose. This reminds me of Rose. Rose this, Rose that. It's like, girl, we get it. Like, you want to find your cousin. Okay, it gets to that in the beginning. You're just like, oh my God, okay, we know you want to find Rose. So she runs away to London to go meet Eve. Okay. So Eve is a drunk, basically, with these like weird knotted hands where she can't really do anything with them, and we'll find out why. Okay, so now we go back to 1915. So 1915, Eve is recruited to be a spy, and remember, at this time, spies were not typically women. So women were being recruited to be spies because they could just like slip under everyone's nose and get information, and no one would even think twice about them. So another special thing about Eve was that she had a stutter. So she came off as stupid and innocent and just this like doe-eyed girl that, you know, you wouldn't think anything of. You just think she's not very smart, which is quite the opposite. So she was sent to work in Lille, France, at a restaurant that serves the Germans, because the Germans were occupying Lille in northern France at the time. And they would frequent this restaurant because the owner was a profiteer. So he made money off of the Germans even during wartime. So Eve, she speaks French, English, and German, but her employer thinks she only speaks French. So she is the perfect person to go in and eavesdrop on the Germans to get information about everything. And she collected some pretty important information. So the owner starts to take a liking to her. So now she's not only getting information from the Germans when she's like cleaning up their dishes and bringing them food. Now she's going to get information from the owner too, because he's friendly with the Germans. So So there's also another character, Finn. He is Eve's driver, but he joins them, and the three of them, so Eve, Charlie, and Finn, they're traveling around France trying to look for answers to figure out what's going on with Rose. Eve is she's on her own mission, and she is out to get revenge. That's pretty much all I can say. The spy network was called the Alice Network, and it was led by a woman named Lily. So not only were women not typically spies, but they were basically controlling the biggest spy network in the area in northern France and Belgium at the time. So what's true, what's not true? This is the part that I thought was pretty interesting. Lily, she is a real person. She was a real person. Her actual name is Louise de Bettigny, and she is known as the Queen of Spies. That is her title. That is what she's known for. Other things that happened that were in the book that were true: she recruited children for a game of tag. Like there was a situation where she was in line to get to pass through the border or to get on the train or something like that. So she recruited, there were kids playing around, and the German soldiers just ignored the kids at the time. She recruited them to bump into this woman, to slide the pass around and then give it back to her. So, because they only had one pass, but they had two people to get on. So things like that. She was able to bluff her way past checkpoints, just acting like, oh, whatever. And there was a situation where she was at a checkpoint and one of the soldiers recognized her as herself by her actual name, Louise de Bettigny. And she was able to just turn it around and just go back to being her and faking her way through the checkpoint to get where she needed to go. So pretty insane. Violet is also one of the spies. She was a real person, but with a different name. And then there was a real massacre of this small town, Oradour-sur-Glane, I believe that's how you say it. Literally almost every one of the villagers was killed by German soldiers. There were only a few survivors. One of them was a woman who survived an inferno in the church, and she is also in the book under her name, and almost her exact testimony from what she gave was in the book as how she explained what happened. So remember, at this time, women weren't seen as smart or capable beings, let alone being in charge of this spy network and gathering all this information and being known as war heroes, basically. Also, spy work was not considered glamorous. It wasn't like Hollywood or James Bond. That's not what they thought of. They were considered like dirty people. Spies weren't really considered real human beings almost. Like they were just considered dirty people. So, I enjoyed this book because it really shows how strong and badass women can be, and it shows like the characters, how they grew. Like Charlie, at the beginning she was a scared little girl, and by the end she was coming into her own and learning how to think for herself and do what she wants. She told her mom off and all that stuff. And Eve started as being looked down upon because she had a stutter and they didn't think she was very smart, to being literally a war heroine. So I did like this book. Like I said at the beginning, I was like, oh my god, we know you want to find your cousin Rose. But it became way more than that towards the middle and towards the end. I wish I would have known more of the backstory about Louise de Bentley and the Queen of Spies and that sort of thing, because I feel like I would have been able to appreciate the story a little better and the characters. But I'm always someone, like when I'm reading something, I always want to go research and see like if it happened or what happened or what it looked like and who the players were, and I want to know everything about it just because I like history. And I did not do that this time because I didn't want to ruin the story, because I didn't know where it was going and what was going to happen. So I did that afterwards. So yeah, so if you read the book, I want to know what you thought about it. What did you think? Yeah, so leave a comment. Don't forget to thumbs up on the bottom, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.